In this video, we'll look at the conditional question type, and it's the last one from the question type dropdown, and it's a lot like the multi-part question in some regards, but very different in other regards. So if we pull up in the Writing Questions Help Guide, and we find the conditional part, we'll find some information about this. We see it's a variation on the multi-part questions, includes multiple answer boxes, but assigns a single score. So this is maybe the most flexible of all of the question types. It allows you to basically create your own question types based on the other ones. And so it says that we're going to reference student answers through the StuAnswers array. So some required variables are answer types or ans types. So we need to tell it what types of input to put in the screen. So kind of like what we did with multi-part questions, where you say what each part of the question is going to be. And then we need to define the answer, but now we have a list of different options for the answer. So this can be a Boolean, where if the Boolean evaluates to true, they get credit for it. If it doesn't, they get 0 for it. You can do a numerical value between 0 and 1, which can award partial credit, which can be nice. And then you've got some other options for easily doing comparisons. So let's look at an example of this. I'm going to write in some simple text here. So maybe I say something like, enter a pair of values satisfying y equals 2 times x. And then we have an area for an x value. We'll do answer box 0 there. And then we'll have an input area for a y value. And since we're using answer box 0 and answer box 1, we really need to indicate what type of inputs we want. So we'll do ans types equals, and then we'll make both of these calculated so that students can enter computations. And now if we save this and preview it, we should see something kind of nice. So we see kind of what we expect to see. We have two inputs here, so maybe we do like x equals 2 and y equals 4. However, we're not going to get correct feedback for this because we haven't told the system like how to grade this. Our next task is essentially tell the system how to grade this question. So first of all, we need to get student answers. From the Writing Questions Help, there's a section on getting student answers. And so maybe we define a variable StuX to get the student's x value. And there's an array called StuAnswersVal. So this is like the StuAnswers array. And then it's going to pull the value of that for calculated type questions. And so we're going to access that array for this question. So $this Q is going to give back the number of this question. And so with the StuAnswersVal, we're going to feed it this Q to get students' answers on this question. And then we're also going to indicate which part of the question. So we'll do square bracket 0 to indicate we want the student's answer on this question for part 0. We'll do a similar thing for StuY. So we'll do StuY equals StuAnswersVal, this Q, and then 1. So what we did here was we pulled out the student's answers and we put them in variables. So one nice thing to do if you're testing around with this is in your question text, just kind of feed out some of these values. So we could do StuX and then say variable StuX and then StuY and feed out StuY, just so we can see if we're getting what we're looking for. So if we enter some values in, so we did like 1 plus 1 and then 2 times 2. Now in our question text, we see StuX is 2, StuY is 4. So that's good. We're pulling the calculated values out of there. So now what we need to do, now that we have the students' answers, is tell the system what kind of relationship we should have or how to grade this thing. So in this case, we could do answer equals, and then we could do StuY is equals 2 times StuX. So what this is doing is saying, this is like a comparison here. It's going to output a Boolean, and it's going to output true if the student's y value is equal to 2 times their x value. So if that's true, then that expression is going to be true and answer is going to be true. So the student's going to get correct feedback. Otherwise, they're not. So let's give this a run. So we can do x equals, we'll do 2.3, and then we could just do 2 times 2.3 for y. We submit that, and now we get correct feedback. However, if you entered like anything outside of there, it's a no-go. So the cool thing about this is the student could enter any x value, so they could do enter 1, and so long as y is 2 times as large, they're going to get correct feedback. So they could enter like 123.45 for x, and so long as their y value is 2 times as large, they're going to get credit for the question. So you've got a ton of flexibility here. This allows you to do custom type questions, and essentially allows students to enter different things and grade based on the relationships between the things that they entered. So one thing I want to point out about this is in the writing questions help, there should be a section on Stu answers. So you can find some if you just kind of search for Stu answers. There are some little notes about Stu answers and what those represent. So you can search for that. Also, there are some other nice functions within here. In a section called Conditional Test Macros, there are a few functions such as compare numbers that'll compare two numbers and then return true or false based on whether or not they're equal to each other. There's function compare functions to compare two expressions. You've got things like is numeric to test if something is numeric. And so these are nice functions to use within the conditional question type because it allows you to like easily compare two expressions. You could have students enter two like variable expressions and then compare them using the compare functions function.